Welcome to Diplomatic Channel this week. I am Amarachi Ubani. So security remains a major challenge here in Africa. Fighting continues in Mali's north. The DRC is still in conflicts. Countries such as Libya and Tunisia, which participated in the Arab Spring, are yet to experience real stability. Even here in Nigeria, insurgency in the north has led to the loss of lives and property. You already know there's been a lot of attention on security here in Nigeria. Many of our bilateral ties have security top on the list. One of the countries we have strong ties to as concerns security is the United States, which already has a command in Africa, one of 6 of the U.S. Defense Department's geographic competence commands, responsible to the Secretary of Defense for military relations with African nations. And during a live web chat last week, the commander of AFRICOM, General David Rodriguez, and the Assistant Secretary for African Affairs, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, talked about U.S. foreign policy and security cooperation in sub-Saharan Africa. Both mentioned one key solution to solving the problem: partnership. Africa has to do its part if it wants to have safer societies. While they both discussed efforts by AFRICOM in parts of Africa, they say they're not just concerned about the insurgency by Boko Haram in Nigeria, but government's response to it.
Our suggestion to the government is that they need a broad perspective. It's not all about security. They do have to take into account the impact of their operations on civilian populations, and hopefully as they go after Boko Haram, that they build a partnership with the civilian community.
Or working the mill-to-mill relationships and advising them in the same manner as the Assistant Secretary mentioned, to do a whole-of-government approach that includes the people, the security forces, and of course the government. And I think that it's going to be a challenge. It's a tough issue up there in that northeast where Boko Haram is, and we're all working together from many different directions to help move this forward and support the Nigerians in this struggle.
In diplomatic headlines, each week seems to reveal more and more of the U.S. involvement in phone tapping scandals with its allies. While Germany is still coming to terms with the Chancellor Angela Merkel's phone being tapped, Spanish media say the NSA also secretly monitored 60 million phone calls in Spain in 1 month. The reports say the latest allegations came from documents provided by U.S. fugitive analyst Edward Snowden. They say the NSA collected the numbers and locations of the caller and the recipient, but not the call's content. Spain has demanded the US to give details of the eavesdropping. Over in Asia, 6 South Koreans returned by North Korea on Friday are said to have entered into the country through China. The men said they had been held in detention centers before their return. Some had experienced employment problems and had believed life in the north will be better. Meanwhile, in the Middle East, the Israeli government has approved the release of another 26 Palestinian prisoners as part of a US brokered deal for the resumption of peace talks. The prisoners were all convicted of murders committed prior to the 1993 Oslo Accords between Israel and the Palestinian Liberation Organization. The move is part of agreements reached since Israel and Palestine officials resumed direct talks in Jerusalem in August after a 3-year hiatus. Then, Afghan President Hamid Karzai is in the UK this week to hold talks with his Pakistani counterpart Nawaz Sharif. Britain will chair the meeting, which aims to improve troubled relations between the two Asian countries. Afghanistan believes that the Taliban's safe havens in Pakistan are the main cause of increased violence in the country.
Our bilateral ties on security continues with the African Partnership Station, an international initiative developed by the United States Naval Forces Europe-Africa, which works with the U.S. and international partners to improve maritime security and safety in Africa, as well as part of AFRICOM. The other week, a Dutch ship berthed on our ports. On board the ship were Military from 6 different nations who participated in trainings on maritime security, flood management and other humanitarian activities with their Nigerian counterparts. This past week, it was a turn of a South African ship, or the Spionkop. Members of the South African Navy trained alongside the Nigerian Navy for a 3-day anti-piracy boarding training. According to the Institute for Security Studies, the most notable event this year has been the increase in piracy incidents off the West African coast, particularly in the Gulf of Guinea. It says this continues the trend set in 2012, noted by the International Maritime Bureau, where despite a sizable drop in the number of attacks in East Africa from 237 in 2011 to 75 in 2012, a total of 58 incidents were recorded in attacks off the West African coast in 2012, and that's compared to 49 in 2011. And most times the incidences are reported as being criminal rather than piratical, as they do not all occur in the international waters, but rather within the sovereign borders of states, which are set at 12 nautical miles offshore, making them subject to countries' own laws and legal systems, rather than being subjected to international law, as is commonly the case of Somalia. Back to the ship's visit now. The SES Spionkop is the third of 4 Valor-class frigates for the South African Navy, built by the European South African Covert Consortium. The name Spionkop originates from a famous battle that took place on January 24th, 1900, during the Second South African War, previously known as the Second Anglo-Boer War. Captain Michael Boucher explains the aim of this operation, which is to build and maintain cooperation with Africa, and Nigeria especially, and other African nations for better protection of their common maritime environment.
As you're aware, piracy is becoming the scourge of the African continent in terms of our sea lines of communication, and it's probably fallen on us as Africans to address those issues internally. So, along with the piracy problem, as well as other issues relating to maritime security, the various chiefs of navies will be discussing and hopefully pen out an action plan for the future.
When we come back after the break, we'll be talking to the South African High Commissioner to Nigeria, Ambassador Lulu Mguni, on bilateral ties and the ever-recurring problem of xenophobic attacks. Just stay with us.
Fun, inspiration and knowledge. That's what you get from readers, writers, publishers and the entire book world. Get some interesting reviews, events, interviews and latest updates from the book world. The Channel's Book Club, inspiring you one page at a time.
Welcome back. Nigeria and South Africa share a very peculiar history. Nigeria was one of the foremost supporters of black South African liberation movements, including the African National Congress. The Nigerian government issued more than 300 passports to South Africans seeking to travel abroad. And even famous Nigerian musician Sonny Okosun wrote a hit song, Fire in Soweto, in 1977 to commemorate the 1976 Soweto uprising against white rule in South Africa. And after the end of apartheid in 1994, South African businesses encouraged professionals to immigrate. A large number of Nigerians did so. And at the last count in 2011, an estimated number of 24,000 Nigerians have been living in South Africa. Of course, the numbers would be much higher by now, but there's been increasing competition between both countries at multilateral organizations and the quest for who is greatest in Africa. Nigeria acted against South Africa to replace the AU chairperson Jean Ping, but the South African Home Affairs Minister, Nkosana Dlamini Zuma, clinched a powerful position. Côte d'Ivoire was another point of dissension. While the South African government backed incumbent President Laurent Gbagbo, Nigeria was in favor of Alassane Ouattara to take over as president. Nigeria says it's not in competition, but in May this year, President Goodluck Jonathan was in South Africa. The visit was major because he drew attention away from any rivalry to focus on Africa. The president challenged African leaders to pay greater attention to the economic emancipation of the people as a way of consolidating the achievements recorded in the liberation of the continent. He said Nigeria and South Africa are not in competition, but are brothers striving for the greater good of the continent. Now, I had a chat with South African High Commissioner to Nigeria, Ambassador Lulu Mguni, about the ties that bind and how to make it stronger. So, Ambassador, thank you so much for joining us. Let's begin with your impression of Nigeria before you came in as ambassador 9 months ago.
Yes, I see Nigeria as a country that is hinged on the philosophy of Pan-Africanism, which is a philosophy that was espoused by our forebears such as Kwame Nkrumah, Petrus Lumumba, Julius Nyerere, Amilcar Cabral, and many other leaders who always believed that Africa cannot be free whilst other African countries are not free. And it also believed that we must strive towards integrating and becoming one, in that we will be able to conquer challenges, whether political or economic, even the neo-colonial ones. So Nigeria has been striving towards that. We saw it in selflessly and steadfastly supporting us in our struggle against apartheid and colonialism. So we have come here. Okay, before I came here, that's a model country that I have. That this is a country that is strong, that has got its own challenges, but it does not move its eyes away from those who are still faced with the challenges of colonialism. It still believes that it wants to be liberated together with others, and that its strength will be more solidified in getting more African countries being free.
But many people know South Africa during the apartheid era, many of us were conversant with the stories back then and Nigeria's role and other countries' role in it, but not many people really know what South Africa's foreign policy is.
Okay, you know, our foreign policy did not come to being in 1994. Our foreign policy was part of our struggle for liberation. When we fought against apartheid, we had certain pillars of our struggle. We had the pillar of the underground. We had the pillar of united mass action against apartheid. We had the pillar of military campaign of struggle against apartheid. And of course, international isolation of apartheid. And of course, mobilization of the international community behind those who are fighting against apartheid. That actually is the main pillar of our foreign policy. I mean, we had leaders like Oliver Tambo. Oliver Tambo, yes, he was a political leader, but he was also a diplomat. So our foreign policy, I mean, if you read people like Moses Kotane in the 50s, they would always talk about South Africa living peacefully with her neighbors. In 1906, we had Pixley Issa Kaseme. He was already talking about the African Renaissance, the regeneration of our continent. Our song, national anthem, is Nkosi Sikelel Africa. It doesn't say anything about South Africa. It talks about Africa because we locate our interests within the continent of Africa. South Africa alone cannot deliver on the expectations of her people. So if you look at our foreign policy, we say our foreign policy is based on the consolidation of the African agenda, where we make sure that now we end conflicts, that we build democracy in our continent, that we work hard to bring about economic development. So it's always about Africa. So we always said that now our interests as South Africans are inextricably bound with those of the African continent. South Africa cannot make it alone. And as this was proved during the struggle, I'm sure even now would be in the trenches if we had to fight this battle alone. Thanks to our friends and our brothers and sisters from Nigeria.
Well, but that beautiful relationship has been ruined by various incidences of xenophobic attacks, not just on you Nigerians, but it does seem like we're the targets, but on Africans as well. who helped you to gain your independence?
Well, I'm sure those challenges exist in any country. Sometimes attacks of foreigners by the nationals. It's not only in South. It happens in all countries. These are challenges which we must face as one African people and see how we make sure that this philosophy of our forebears, who always emphasize African unity, that it moves on. And we are working on it. We are winning our battle of making sure that Nigerian business and South African business work together, and that they improve in each other's countries' economy. And in doing that also, we are shrinking the base that is used by sometimes opportunist forces, or that makes people to engage in such kinds of acts. But we as South Africa, if you call it xenophobia, it is not a part of our foreign policy. That is why we have our own laws that are there to punish anybody who harasses or engages negatively on people, whether be they South Africans, Namibians, or Nigerians. You see, and we have said this openly. That is why we always, time and again, when you interview us, we emphasize this history of South Africa and Nigeria. We are in a way educating our people that we come a long way with these people. We have shared trenches fighting against apartheid. We are now sharing trenches to bring about peace in Africa, to bring about peace in South Africa, to bring about peace in Nigeria. You know, all the resources that which we have, or expertise that which we can have to contain some of these challenges, we need to work together to share, so that, you know, if Nigeria has an...
yes. And it's interesting that you say you're doing something about it, because we do have a correspondent in South Africa, and she tells me that you're listening to the radio, you watch the TV, you're hearing messages, you're hearing stories of people who have been attacked, Nigerians being killed, people who have come under xenophobic attacks in South Africa.
Those are reports you get. Whatever happens, I'm sure in most countries, even here, I'm sure nationals of other countries have had problems. These are challenges which are not in line with our history, because our history is not in line with our history and not in line with our foreign policy, because our foreign policy is hinged on the historical ties that we have shared with Nigeria. But I say that if we can come together, Nigerians and other African countries, talking about this, and of course doing it internally, how we can make sure that there is peace amongst our people, that our people see each other as brothers and sisters. As of course we have forged these ties, through blood and tears as we fought apartheid, and colonialism. Yes, I hear you, what you say, but as South Africans, we use our legal system to try and contain such challenges where they exist. But at the very same time, we are now going out to the communities to educate them about our foreign policy.
You have people going into the communities to educate people on foreign policy?
On foreign policy, yes. We always go out. I was director of the Policy Research and Analysis Unit. So what we did, we were preparing materials for our minister when she went out to the communities to educate our people about our foreign policy and why we view Nigeria as our strategic partner. Because if we have our foreign policy ourselves as intellectuals or whatever, it doesn't help. This must go to the masses so that the masses know. And then once it's with the masses, then that thing will never die. It will continue forever.
And that relationship is growing because we're seeing more and more South African businesses and investments here in Nigeria. But it does seem like you have more stricter rules of engagement when it comes to trade.
No. Well, I'm sure we are working together with Nigeria to meet up with certain challenges and to explain why we have adopted certain laws. Of course, they've developed with our history, and but there's no law that is geared towards in South Africa. That is geared towards barring Nigerians. And even when South Africans come here, they do business with Nigerians. They don't come here and do business alone. And in most cases, they also reciprocate and go to the other country. Because our aim is not just for South Africa to gain, but for both of us to mutually reinforce each other. That is what we are doing. But we are not. And of course, we cannot abstractly take the two sizes of countries and say and expect the same. You know, I remember when we were working, I was ambassador in Mauritius. Then Mauritius was saying, no, but South Africa, you know, we must have the same. It doesn't happen because the economy, the size of the economy, the populations are not the same. You see, and our market is, in a way, moving towards saturation. Whereas, Nigeria has a huge potential. You have not tapped on your minerals, for instance. You have not tapped on quite your agriculture. You see, and we are here not because we just want to take, but to make sure that Nigeria realizes its potential, that those things which they cannot work on, like in mining. South Africa has more than 100 years of experience in mining, and we want to bring that expertise so that Nigeria can begin then to rise, and when Nigeria wins, we also win. There's a dialectical link between ourselves and Nigeria, and we are not. You know, we are here talking about South Africa in consolidation of the African agenda, that we want a better Nigeria, a better South Africa, in a better world. If Nigeria as our neighbor is not strong, that impacts negatively on us, and vice versa. So it's not about us. It's about us and the continent. It's about the whole of us winning here. Because South Africa and Nigeria have a responsibility as a central force to galvanize the whole continent and make sure that now the positive developments that we see are harnessed and made sure that they benefit the ordinary people of the continent, that jobs are created, that poverty is ended, that Africa has an ongoing development, because we believe that this is an African century, but we cannot dream about it. We have together make it happen.
And you know, I'm also going to talk about visas because President Goodluck Jonathan was in your country in May, and you say you're already the process. I don't know. Ma'am, your requirements for visas are much tougher.
South Africa is for the creation of soft borders. South Africa has no policy that we say we don't want outsiders to come to our country. Nobody has approached us and said, Ambassador, can you help us? We have this challenge. We want to go to South Africa, and then we say, no, we cannot help you, or we start pulling rules and say that. We try our best to help Nigerians because we are for soft borders. Even our president is for soft borders. But this opening up is not an event, but a process. We have started, we have removed the question of diplomatic visas and the official, the diplomatic passport and
which was one of the issues that President Goodluck Jonathan raised when he was in South Africa in May, the removal of... No,
ma'am. You see, that's why I say you must know this has been a process, not an event. It's not because President Jonathan said this and then it happened. No, we worked on these things. We had agreements, 9 agreements to work on in South Africa and Nigerians sitting together.
So it is in force already?
Yes, it's in force, but it's not because of one side. It is a partnership. We work together and say, how can we make sure that now we allow a free movement? Then we have a structure that meets every 3 months. Every 3 months. We met about 2 weeks ago. And then we look at immigration and consular matters and where there are still challenges, how we can solve these things.
Okay, well, you're involved in the African Partnership Station. South African ship came into our ports about 2 weeks ago. Tell us about it.
Well, that is a South African ship. It's a South African ship. It's not the first visit. Nigerians, when they were going to Australia, they passed through Cape Town, visit our people in Simonstown, this clearly indicates that our relations are growing, and that we always want to share whatever expertise, whatever technical weapons we have, which can assist both of us in containing or addressing our challenges. So we were just here. It's a sign of solidarity. It's also a sign of saying, once again, thank you, Nigeria. That's why we started here before moving to other countries.
Okay, my final question. The UK government has decided to repatriate quite a number of Nigerians into the country back to serve their sentences here. And I understand it's not just Nigerians, of course. This is also targeted to other Africans. I just wanted to get your opinion on that.
Well, this is not a new thing. When I was ambassador in the Republic of Mauritius, I engaged in this with the British, trying to make sure that our prisoners be sent home to serve their sentences there, because the strain of people having to go, to visit their families, they don't even have resources sometimes, all that we need to, for the mere fact that one of their family members has already been moved away, no matter what crime that person has committed, really we cannot then extend it to the family that they must experience the same sort. We work together with the British. I know that they were strong on that, and I support that.
Ambassador, thank you so much for speaking with us.
Thank you very much.
And that's Diplomatic Channel this week. Thanks for watching. Join our discussions online at facebook.com/Diplomatic Channel, or leave us a comment at Diplomatic Chan or Diplomatic Channel at channelstv.com. I am Amarachi Ubani. I'll see you next time.